So we're going to look at this match between TNC and Vice Esports and focusing on one player in particular, and we're going to look at Queen of Pain played by Armel. This is the Southeast Asia Division 1 of the DPC, and we'll end up noticing that with the battle he ends up going and picking up a bounty rune, and then straight after this he's going to get this haste rune here. So there's a heavy emphasis on regenning his mana, clearing the creep waves with his spells, but also at this point you'll notice that he doesn't have his ultimate skill at level 6, which is kind of a little bit odd. You generally see Quaps doing this, and he was probably hoping that he could just stall in this lane for a little bit longer. Now, if Kunkka just executes his combo correctly, Grimstroke can just throw in a silence straight after this, and Quap has no ability to respond to any of this. Once she gets caught by the X marks the spot, she has no really chance to respond to this. So this is actually a pretty easy kill for the enemy to get. Just all the support had to do was run at the Queen of Pain with the Kunkka. Now we end up seeing what the Queen of Pain does straight after this. Instead of coming back to her lane and dealing with more of this, is that she goes to the opposite side of the map, going to the off lane. She teleports here, and pretty much you'll end up seeing that Nyx goes in a little bit early here. He ends up doing a stun, and Quap blinks in. Quap could have just run up to the Juggernaut and got a good position. If she had her ultimate as well, they probably could have even killed Juggernaut at that point, because there wasn't really any support sitting behind him. Now, what Juggernaut does as a result of the Quap coming to the lane, for people who don't know, Quap is a pretty hard counter against Jugger. It makes a hard time for him if he's laning against her, so he pretty much goes to the opposite side of the map. Now, Queen of Pain cannot respond to this and go and teleport top, because she's just after teleporting bottom. So as a result, what she ends up doing is just pushing in this creep wave. Now, if we look at the draft as well that they have Lycan, who was playing in the off lane, and also Ursa, who's going for a Battle Fury. And this draft is very greedy. They need to take up the jungle, and what Quap's job is almost just to fight and try and get killed. So it's important that she's actually actively putting pressure on the map in other places. She's not supposed to be the carry in this type of match. And if she got caught by X marks the spot there, she could have been in pretty big trouble there as well. So now Juggernaut's after pushing up top lane. This is like 9 minutes into the game. Quap teleports top to respond to this. Doesn't let Juggernaut get any tower damage really easily. And this forces Juggernaut to teleport away. Now what Jugger does is actually a pretty smart teleport. He TPs mid, and it's going to put pressure on the mid lane. And this actually ends up forcing the Queen of Pain to have to rotate to mid. And Quap has seen exactly what's going on here, and she's making her way over. However, she only has level 1 blink, so it takes her quite a long time to get here. With more levels of blink, you have a lower cooldown, better mobility over the map. But as you can see with the just general positioning, they're already winning this fight. The Grimstroke is down, and the Mars was actually doing quite well up until this point, and pretty much the Quap is getting the kills here. And also this Earth Spirit is trying to escape, and I think maybe they get a stun here just from Nyx or something, or he just teleports out just about. So the Quap is actively doing her job, getting a lot of kills, putting a lot of pressure. Juggernaut's having, this is the third time she's chasing down Jugger in the first 10 minutes. Kind of insane if you're playing Jugger and you say this Quap is everywhere on the map if you were playing against her. So we'll end up seeing Quap is attempting a bait play. She's sitting on mid lane while Disruptor sits behind, and the idea is Disruptor can hit down a big ulti on top of this, and you can have other units to follow in after this as well. As Lycan can get to fights very quickly with his fast movement speed, but this ends up not turning out to be too great here, because once she cuts the creep wave here, the enemy can see her, and they end up getting a silence here right from the fog. So this is really good exploitation of the fog of war from the enemy team, particularly the Grimstroke getting in close to get the silence, and it's actually catches the Queen of Pain and breaks down their pressure into the enemy side of the map completely. Now Quap, as you see, is going to Ewells to try and deal with some of the spells and stall against the enemy. They have 2 silences, Grimstroke and Earth Spirit, as well as that stuff like Mars and Kunkka's spells are pretty easy to dodge if you have a Ewell Scepter. So you end up seeing she's going for a kill in here, really aggressive. However, this was a bait. It was again set up. They knew exactly where she was going, and it's almost like the enemy is predicting exactly. Queen of Pain is the one that's just going to run around and try and look for fights, but Quap is not really the bigger target. She's just a fighting hero at this point in the game, and the Lycan and Ursa are more so like the later game. Those are the ones scaling for the late parts of the game, and the Quap can actually make these mistakes and not have too much of an issue, because if we look at the Jugger, what he ends up building, because he wasn't gonna get a Battle Fury quick enough, he ends up going for Midas, trying to copy the mid one, what he was doing there yesterday or the day before. And pretty much the Quap again, instantly when Jugger shows in the lane, she comes to the lane where Jugger is, forcing him to like leave this lane again and again and again. So you see how there's such a huge emphasis on exploiting her strengths, and the fact that she's not just picking like this as a counter pick to Jugger, but is actively pursuing to counter and make it the Jugger's life miserable most of the match. So we end up seeing that Quap is going to farm here quite aggressively, because now she's just after picking up her Yules. And we end up seeing that Kunkka comes in with the Torrent. He ends up missing the Torrent and then X's afterwards. So kind of a weird way of doing the combo. And pretty much Quap can just kill off this silence leash, or what do you call it, the debuff that's linked to her, and pretty much she just can teleport to the other side of the map and go back and farming or whatever she wants to do. But we end up noticing she's going for an Orchid at this point into the game. It seems pretty late to go for an Orchid at this point, and generally it's not always a good idea because often people just have easy ways to dispel it. However, if we look at what Juggernaut is building, we end up seeing that he's going Midas, Maelstrom, and his next item is Aghanims, and he actually starts building towards this. So Quap can probably end up like checking that at some point if she wanted, or someone on her team might have already told her what Jug's building. So this ends up being a pretty good counter for a little bit later on. Now she ends up focusing in on the Mars here, who's a bit out of position, and pretty much gets caught as well by the Disruptor's Glimpse, and she ends up being able to continue keep farming after this. So these are not really like hard kills to get. It was just good vision that her team had, and she's just utilizing it. You know, pretty straightforward stuff that really anyone can do. But the Orchid is like something that we'll end up seeing maybe a little bit later that takes into a big role into the game. So the enemy's after going for a smoke here. She gets pinned to the wall, and pretty much now we have a Disruptor counter initiation. So we see throughout this match that the Disruptor and Quap are combining really well together. And Quap ends up using her ult just before she dies. She toggles Treads a couple of times, and she toggles back to Int just to get enough mana so she can blink away. So pretty lucky she survives there. I wouldn't really count that as like entirely skill there, but very, very lucky she survives. But even if she dies there, they win this fight anyways, and we end up seeing that she even gets back to the fight here with a teleport scroll plus a blink back in, and ends up doing some damage out here to get Jugger. So regardless of the Quap was there or not, if she died there or not, it would have still been a pretty good fight here. However, they end up like committing a little bit too hard, or Mars ends up coming in here in a second, and he gets off a pretty good ulti plus the Grimstroke. And Quap does get out here. Nyx Assassin dies, and also Disruptor. So the two supports end up dying, but Quap can now just like get out pretty easily. But this was all just a distraction. Ursa and Lycan were taking Roshan. So it didn't even matter. What seemingly was an overcommit turns into something bigger, because you have picked two heroes that are incredibly fast at killing Roshan even just by themselves, and if you win one team fight in the mid game, it pulls you so far ahead. Now we end up seeing what ends up happening here is look at the win probability. See how over the past couple of minutes, these like the fight that they had on mid lane plus the Roshan taking it, this brought them 25% ahead in their favor. They're now a 75% chance of winning according to Dota Plus. So after a round like Dota Plus tends to be after around 15 minutes, tends to be very accurate with their probability of winning. So, and you also see that at a lot of matches at this like high rank, usually the team that takes Roshan first has a very high chance of being the winner. You can almost predict who's going to win based off of that. So we have another fight coming up here, and Quap is just staying at the edges. She's not committing in. Usually there's a pretty big temptation to jump in here, but we end up seeing the enemy has a pretty good favorable position here, and they end up not even going in on this fight anyways. So that's just good to hold yourself back, not to go in on something stupid, because really there isn't a whole lot to do there. You want to catch the enemy by surprise. You want to have a good initiation. You don't want to do something stupid. They may have also been waiting for a certain player to get an item. We see Quap is jumping into the back line here, and this is not very typical of what you would see the normal player do. The normal player would have jumped in at the very, very start of the fight, and we end up seeing this is the Orchid. It comes out in Jugger. He can't react. He can't do anything, and pretty much the Jugger is useless if he has no spells, and also if he can't get close enough to Quap, because even if he could get his Omni Slash ready, Queen of Pain can just blink away while he's Omni Slash, and this Juggernaut build has no way to deal with this Quap's Orchid, which is going to be pretty disastrous for this Jugger, because now even if he goes and pushes a creep wave by himself, Queen of Pain could just jump on Jugger, orchid him, and now Jugger cannot do his typical spin and teleport away because Quap can either just burst him down or she just gets the orchid and he can't even spin. So, and she has Yules to break his teleport as well. So this Jugger has a very hard time against Quap off of her entire skill set at this moment in time. With Quap here in a very aggressive position, and we end up seeing that this is pretty much, she's baiting here, and the enemy may or may not notice. And if we just see Mars is standing across the river, Mars blinks in and Yules the Quap. And pretty much here the Quap goes in on Mars, because the reason is Mars's main way to dispel the silence is using Yules, and he can also dispel Queen of Pain's dagger as well. But this is a really weird initiation. We end up seeing Earth Spirit and Mars blinking in at the same time. However, if we look at where what Jugger is doing right now, is that he's up here. Jugger is at the other side of the map. Their team is not ready, so the Quap can see this Jugger up here as well. And if we have Ursa, look at this Ursa, he's coming in behind with a smoke. So the TNC are actually like a step ahead here. And we end up seeing all this fights going on here, and meanwhile Jugger teleports in and Ursa is right here, right in front of Jugger, and boom, Jugger just dies instantly in the back line. And Quap just end up like starting some fight on mid lane. They end up just causing the enemy to like get completely destroyed. Here's Quap now, and pretty much the enemy just get wiped. Like, they have no real chance of winning at this point. And the big lead means as well, like the 11k network lead gives them a huge advantage to take these fights. Even if they have only 3 heroes or 4 heroes together, they can probably still win against the enemy. So the enemy just end up GGing soon after this. So hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown. If you want to see more Dota content like this, make sure you subscribe, and we'll do some more DPC videos like this every time that there's a Division 1 game on.